The term of the Jade Phoenix was coined by Clan Jade Falcon in the 31st and 32nd centuries. In its first form, it was applied to a Mechwarrior named Aiden Pride, who would die in the Battle of Tukid against the forces of Comstar, but not before he'd proven himself to be the label that he had been given. The name would later be used, out of respect, for an 85-ton clan assault totem mech, built by the very same clan. Why do I bring this up here? Because in this video we are going to be examining a juggernaut of the Marik-Stewart Commonwealth, and the premier Marik heavy hitter of the Dark Age. One which was built to be the new, cutting edge of the most powerful of the League's successor states, which would survive the collapse of its creators at the hands of Operation Hammerfall, and is now the champion of the Free Worlds League, which reconstituted itself in response. A mighty Battlemech in many respects, this hulking monstrosity embodies death and resurrection, very much in the same light as to what was described before. Though named for the first Captain General of the Free Worlds League, this Battlemech is truly the Amethyst Phoenix of the League, if not in name, then in spirit. In this video, we are going to examine Irian Battlemechs Unlimited's Dark Age Devastator, the Juliano. An assault mech weighing in at 90 tons, the Juliano represents a great leap forward for the former core of the Free Worlds League, known as the Marik-Stewart Commonwealth, but its history is one that is tied quite closely to the crisis that impacted the former Free Worlds League, and caused it to collapse. The bleakest era of Battletech would see the Free Worlds League shattered due to a series of factors. Thomas Hallis was exposed as a fraud, him being the body double of Thomas Marik, and his attempts to keep hold of power would be his final undoing, as well as the undoing of the state. Thomas Hallis was a Blakist plant himself who would get cold feet as the real Thomas Marik, the Master, descended further and further into madness. Another factor for the collapse beyond a fraud attempting to hold onto power at the top of House Marik was that the rest of the real Mariks became quite interested in removing his family from power. Many of these individuals were very well titled. But who would be Captain General afterwards? A grim irony would be that the Free Worlds League would more or less enter into a series of succession wars after the Blakist defeat. The most powerful of the states to emerge from this had been the Marik-Stewart Commonwealth, ruled by one of the closest legitimate branches of succession for the Free Worlds League. It's important to realize that the League had been industrially built for centuries to prevent its duchies and provinces from having major industrial bases outside of the Marik Commonwealth. The leadership of the League never truly trusted their co-rulers in other regions, and especially the leadership of the Regulans. Funnily enough, by this late stage, the Regulan fiefs were in fact ruled by the last remaining significant branch of House Cameron. They are an offshoot of the former line of the Director Generals of the Terran hegemony, House Cameron Jones. I thought it wise to add that here, as there are often people who ask what would happen if House Cameron returned, and there isn't this realization that they never fully left. One thing that had changed during the final administration of the Free Worlds League in the 31st century was a clear industrial expansion into the originally more rural duchies. This would mean that these states would have far more teeth to them during the failing, violent conflagration and breakup of the Marik Civil Wars. Unlike previous points of history, the Marik Commonwealth was not so industrially powerful and militarily capable as to keep the whole mess of a state together. Worse, they'd lost Irian to the Republic of the Sphere, the third most important industrial center in the entirety of the Inner Sphere, and the beating heart of the League's economy. Even with the loss of Irian, however, the Commonwealth was no industrial slouch. Worlds like Thermopolis, Keystone, Angel 2, and Loyalty all had meaningful Battlemech military production, and put the Commonwealth in a commanding position in comparison to its breakaway neighbors. But even then, the Commonwealth would never have the military power needed to truly win the ongoing crisis of the former Free Worlds League. This was not to say, of course, that they wouldn't try. During the earliest portion of the 32nd century, the Marik-Stewart Commonwealth would embark on attempting to build a premier, high-quality assault mech for this new era of warfare. This was not only a matter of military necessity, given the ongoing issues with its former Free Worlds neighbors, but it was also a matter of national prestige, and to signal their supremacy over their wayward subjects. Plans would be drawn up by one of Irian's offshoots on Angel 2, and inevitably the contract would be awarded to their innovative and devastating design. The mech that would emerge from all of this would be named Juliano, in honor of the first Captain General of the Free Worlds League, and it was as dominating as the Captain Generals had been in the past. The first of these machines would begin walking off the assembly line on Angel in 3116. Often, the heaviest and most powerful assault mechs are viewed as 100-ton monsters like the Atlas, but these have rarely been the staple of the Free Worlds League military, barring their innovative Grand Titan Battlemech. Instead, the Juliano is a mid-sized assault that moves like a heavy and uses advanced clan-level technologies, at least as far as its weaponry is concerned. It also innovates in several other ways, especially regarding pilot survivability. On the battlefield, its presence is impossible to ignore, especially once it reaches medium or close ranges, its ideal killing grounds. It would become every bit the face of the army of the Marik-Stewart Commonwealth that it was intended to be. Exports of the Juliano were expressly forbidden by the Commonwealth immediately after its manufacture, meaning that all examples of this mech, save for those that were captured by enemy forces, were locked to the Commonwealth throughout its existence. This was the premier, frontline attacker of the deceptively powerful successor state of the League. Unfortunately, despite being the strongest single remnant of the Free Worlds League, the Marik-Stewart Commonwealth would be undone by its true ancient rival, the Lyran Commonwealth. The seat of power of the main branch of House Marik would be invaded at the height of the Dark Age in Operation Hammerfall, with Clan Wolf and Steiner allying with one another for the assault. The alliance itself would break down shortly after the successful acquisition of the Commonwealth's territories, and the death of Captain General Anson Marik. The remnants of this state would be attached to the now reborn Free Worlds League shortly after. Those remnants would include the world of Angel 2. This would mean that after the line stabilized between the League and the New Wolf Empire, a state now lording over billions of the League's citizens on their worlds, including important hubs like Keystone and Thermopolis, the Juliano would be able to stand in opposition of this new hostile state. But in this transition, and the now shifting borders and violent times, the new Free Worlds League, the recreated military of the now restored successor state, would take up the Juliano as their own premier assault mech, if not the face of the League itself once more. This is perhaps militarily the legacy of the Marik-Stewart Commonwealth. And much like the Commonwealth before them, all exports of this mech were banned. It is only supported in terms of production and maintenance by the League itself. Better yet, by 3146, 2 brand new configurations of the Juliano would be constructed as well for the changing battlefields of the Inner Sphere, including a new configuration using wholly clan armaments. In fact, this 90-ton beast's reputation is so strong that Kenyon Marik, the offspring of the last Captain General of the Marik-Stewart Commonwealth, Anson Marik, as well as now the former Minister General of the Free Worlds League, and the son-in-law of Duke Julio Marik, would select this as his personal ride when he left his position in the government to join the front lines in the liberation of his homeland. Some would even claim Kenyon Marik is perhaps the man who should be Captain General even now, rather than the current leader who resides on the throne of Atreus, as his claim of legitimacy is stronger, and his demeanor is decidedly more aggressive. During the dark times of the late Dark Age and Ilclan era, Perhaps the League needs commanders who are more willing to take charge, rather than those who hide behind their office while reprimanding commanders for fighting a war that has to be waged. Ignoring the importance of those who pilot it, the Juliano was the pride of the AMSC, until it was destroyed by the brutal invaders from Clan Wolf and the Lyran Commonwealth Armed Forces, and it would rise again as a great Amethyst Phoenix, alongside the resurrected Free Worlds League, to be the pride of the armed forces there as well. It is a story of destruction and renewal for the nation that flies the eagle. The first model of the Juliano constructed, and still the standard model in service as of 3152, is the JLN-5A Juliano. This 90-ton Titan uses an array of advanced technologies, using the cutting edge of what was available at the time of its original construction. Weight-saving measures are used, but are of configurations that have the least impact on the mech's internal capacity. To begin the journey down the long road of the mech's components, beginning with its core chassis features, the JLN-5A Juliano has an endocomposite internal structure. This reduces its core structure's weight from 9 tons down to 7, but at the expense of critical space, just not as much as a full endo-steel internal structure would cost. After this, it has a standard gyro, but more importantly, it has an armored cockpit. With its cockpit being armored, this means that the mech can, in theory, survive a critical hit to the head of the Battlemech, which is not only life-saving to the pilot, but it can mean that the mech can survive in a prolonged engagement even after taking grievous damage to its head, so long as it has not been outright annihilated. Where cooling is concerned, the JLN-5A is a bit of a mixed bag. It's important to note that its weaponry is range bracketed, but even then, it may struggle at times to use each range bracket without overheating. It isn't hopeless in this respect, however. The Juliano has a total of 16 double heat sinks on board, letting it cool 32 every turn. Though it is noteworthy that in the advanced rules, the JLN series as a whole does get an invisible buff against heat spikes. Once we get into the realm of electronics, we can look at a fairly standard suite regarding its assets. First, it has an Irian HMR-35S communications package, which it then pairs with an Omicron alert targeting and tracking system. Neither of these directly provide a buff to the Juliano, but it does have an advanced onboard combat computer. The make and type of the system are not listed, but in the advanced rules, the JLN series has the trait known simply as combat computer. This means it reduces its heat load by 4 every turn, which is incredible for the mech, given its weapons loadout, making it just that extra bit more effective, to the point of making it a real monster. Assault Battlemechs will often sacrifice mobility in favor of firepower. The Juliano, however, does not. Irian Battlemechs would ensure that the JLN series were built from the ground up to move at the speed of battle, or at least the inner sphere version of the speed of battle. Powered by a 16.5-ton Hermes 360 XL fusion engine, this Marik fighter can reach a maximum speed of 64 km per hour, or 6 movement points in the tabletop game. This means that it moves at the same speed often expected of lighter Assault-Mechs or heavies. Mobility profiles often dictate roles, and in this mech it is no different. The Juliano will outpace more dedicated breakthrough mechs, and can be used as a battering ram against heavies and its lighter counterparts. Given it was designed with the League's traditional inner sphere enemies in mind, this is definitely a boon, as its mobility allows it to prevent its Capellan, Marian, and Lyran counterparts from getting away from it, before its powerful jaws can shut around them, delivering the killing blow. But this mobility does come at a cost. First, Inner Sphere XL engines do add a distinct level of vulnerability. Namely, they add the debuff that if a side torso is lost, the mech will be destroyed immediately. It also means the mech is more likely to take engine hits in general, as the engine takes up so many additional slots on board. The other shortcoming is that the Juliano, while quick, may not be able to directly engage other Assault-Mechs, just because of the priorities of how its tonnage has been distributed. Protection is vital to a Battlemech of any weight, and it can be achieved in multiple ways. The Juliano accomplished this through several key points, one of which was discussed earlier. Yes, it has an armored cockpit, increasing pilot safety and making it a bit more difficult for a lucky headshot to remove the mech from the battlefield. But it's also very well guarded from incoming fire as a whole. Slathered in 16.5 tons of Duralex Guardian 2 light ferrofibrous plating, the Juliano has an intensely durable shell, giving it an extremely respectable 279 points of armor. This makes it very heavily guarded. Just giving an example, it is only 25 points of armor short of an Atlas. This thick armored carapace protects the mech's vitals, such as its gyro and engine, and it is absolutely necessary due to its XL engine. This also keeps it in the fight for an extended period as well. The next key point of its protection is its Case 2 system. The Juliano's main close-range punch is ammunition-based, and keeping these vulnerable and volatile components safe is key. Should they be struck, these two case systems will prevent the mech, in theory, from being knocked out in a single round. Inevitably, the Juliano, between its armored cockpit, its thick armor, and its Case 2 systems, is an endurance fighter, despite its XL engine. This means unless one of its side torsos can be removed, or unless it's brought down by a massively powerful strike to the head, the mech will continue fighting, even as its opposition erodes and degrades. Even its decent mobility plays a role in keeping this mech operational and guarded. The Juliano so far is a hardy assault mech that can keep up with battle line formations. This makes it very desirable to have. But does it have any shortcomings? While it does have an abundance of tonnage for weaponry, and it can be quite lethal, it is most definitely not a flawless machine in respects to its weaponry. The JLN-5A is most definitely dependent on its close-range capabilities to really put the hurt on its opponents, despite having a large amount of tonnage dedicated towards its long-range fighting capabilities. To start with its heaviest armaments, and the weapons that don't really impress on the battlefield, at least in my view, for fighting targets at range as it closes in, or as it's been staved off, the Juliano has 3 diverse optic Sunbeam extended range large lasers. These weigh a collective 15 tons, and one can be found in the left, right, and center torsos. They have a range of 19 hexes, which is 1 past a traditional PPC, and they independently deal a middling 8 points of damage per hit, 1 more than a clan medium laser. Inner-sphere ER weaponry, outside of their ER medium lasers arguably, are always a tough sell, and for so much of the mech to be built around ER large lasers, it just means that the Juliano is going to be fighting for battlefield effectiveness until it closes to more ideal ranges. These lasers also, when not using the advanced rules, overheat the Juliano to the point where it loses its precious 64 km per hour of movement, if all are fired in a single volley when it is on the move. That is unsurprisingly a problem, because the Juliano needs to close distances, and it needs to run and gun to stay viable. Overall, when the Juliano needs to fight at further distances, these weapons just generate a lot of heat, for not a lot of meaningful outcomes, and can directly hinder the mech's main fighting attributes. These are definitely its least desirable systems. But once it closes into 12 hexes, the Juliano goes from a middling, overheating, undergunned, awesome knockoff to its true lion-like form. It is here that it has, to start with, 3 diverse optics Sunfire extended range medium lasers. These hit for 5 damage each and generate 5 points of heat each. 1 is found in the head and 2 are split between the arms. These do less damage than the large lasers, but generate massively less heat. And these pair well with its true primary armaments. The true primary offensive systems are its 4 pattern J6 Streak 6 SRM launchers, which are of clan quality, while hole punching with its medium lasers. The Streak launchers, with their 60 rounds of ammunition, will hammer targets in a brutal fashion. All combined, if all missiles hit, these will blister targets for 48 points of damage. Admittedly, if we average its rolls, if all 4 hit, it's likely to hit for 28 points of damage. But when paired with its medium lasers, its damage will still frequently clear 40 if it is fighting under ideal conditions, and that is to say nothing of its crit-seeking abilities. This kind of damage is horrifying to face off against, and only the hardiest of Assault-Mechs will weather it for very long. Interestingly, it can safely alpha-strike its close-range weapons package, and walk, without even overheating in the slightest, further leaning into it being an endurance fighter. And for every SRM launcher that misses, the Juliano doesn't generate any heat, and saves on ammunition. In total, a close-range battle against the Juliano is a death sentence. While it might be lackluster and wasteful at long range, it is an absolute monster in close. The Juliano 5A is a vicious close-range killer that will outlast and close with its targets while supporting other heavy battle line units. No mech is an island, and while it may suffer heat problems at range, as well as limited damage, if it can be supplemented by direct fire allies, such as Warhammer or Awesome Series Battlemechs for instance, this monster will thrive like no other. It is quick enough to check heavies and protect itself from flankers. It is protected enough to weather a storm of fire within reason. It is heavily gunned enough at close range that it can sandblast targets into scrap with wave upon wave of SRMs and medium lasers. And even if things get in closer, its kicks land for colossal, leg-crippling damage. No mech is perfect by any means, and certainly the Juliano is not. But it is extremely well thought out, fantastically armed, and could go toe-to-toe with other assaults in close, or hunt and reave through enemy heavy mechs. There is a reason this durable devil is the face of the Free Worlds League military, in the Dark Age and beyond. Logistics and supply chains being what they are means frankly that sometimes higher quality components aren't always on the shelf or immediately available. Whether as a field refit kit or being bought on the cheap from a factory, the JLN-5B is a very simple downgrade for the Juliano, in that it replaces out its clan quality SRM streaks in favor of standard inner sphere SRM-6s. What's the result? Well, outside of saving a few resources, or just having these actually on hand for repairs, it shortens the range of the missiles in each launcher by 3 hexes, and changes their short, medium, and long-range brackets. Beyond this, the heat is the same. Basically, this lowers the Juliano's effective fighting range, which definitely impacts it in battle. But if it can come close, it's every bit as dangerous. The single most lethal House Marik dedicated assault mech is almost certainly the JLN-5C Juliano, at least as of 3152. This absolute monster is one of the most sophisticated domestically produced machines inside of the League, and its battle prowess cannot be denied. To face down the 5C is to face down a titanic challenge. Whereas the 5A and 5B are very, very similar outside of its SRM packages, the 5C is a full Clantech upgrade of the Juliano's weapons array. Its internal components do not change, to be clear, and the only difference is the weaponry itself. That difference can be felt right away, however. Clan ER large lasers are a cut above their inner sphere counterparts, reaching out to a staggering 25 hexes, and hitting with the force of an inner sphere PPC. When using the advanced rules, this means that the Juliano can walk and fire these while only going 1 heat over its normal threshold. Without walking, while standing still, it can fire these and only overheat by 4 points in a single round. This means that it has the same firepower as an AWS-8Q just simply as its backup weapons, for when it is stuck at long range or attempting to outdistance long-range missile-based mechs. From here, it gets even more devastating, as its inner sphere ER medium lasers are flipped out in favor of 3 clan medium pulse lasers. These go the same distance, and are massively more accurate, all while hitting for slightly more damage as well, doing 7 instead of 5, making them basically just as deadly as the 5A's and 5B's large lasers. These combine very well with its SRM-6 streak systems, which are still on board. In total, the 5C is every bit of the mech the 5A and 5B are in terms of the chassis, but its weaponry is just far above the others. It's scarily effective at range, and in close, its fire is now more accurate, and hits harder, all while staying once more heat neutral. Devastating. Many of the Dark Age mechs often don't get credit for being as dangerous as their Blakist era or Ilclan era counterparts, and sometimes this is deserved. It's just a fact of life that on occasion mechs just have odd weapon systems choices that aren't married to an overall design in a significant way, and that does just happen. But this trope cannot be associated with the Juliano. In all of its forms, even in its deliberately downgraded form, it can maul enemy mechs with little trouble. Its hardened outer shell will protect it from all but the most brutal fires, and when it closes, it will unleash hell upon its foes. To see the flagship of the Free Worlds League mech arm is to see an incredibly capable machine, and one which might even be able to trade blows with some clan equivalents, especially in its 5C configuration. It's not beyond having weaknesses though. It has an Inertier XL engine, and despite being impressively gunned in close, it can be overwhelmed at longer distances, or might just be outfought if it's forced to confront heavier and more durable breakthrough Assault-Mechs. Where the Juliano works best is running down heavies, or crashing into the flanks of peer-level Assault-Mechs. While the Juliano can definitely handle itself in close, and it is a battle-winning asset, never forget that nothing is perfect, and all mechs are a piece of a greater whole in an engagement or in a war. The Juliano was there at the lowest point for House Marik during the dark days of disunity, civil war, and the invasion by the now Wolf Empire. It is now there, rising from the ashes of this debacle, like a great beacon for the people of the Free Worlds League, who will rally around it. Woe be to those who would stand against forces with this monster within it, as the eagle spreads its wings once more. Henceforth and for the duration of the crisis, Parliament shall gather and disband as the Captain General deems fit. Thank you for joining me here today. Well, that was great. The Juliano is now covered, meaning that all of the Dark Age mechs I'd intended to cover for this outing have been completed. On the horizon now is Technical Readout 3055 in all of its glory. I'm going to be first covering the mechs of the Inner Sphere in this array of machines, before diving into the clan mechs, which are on display for the book. It's something to really look forward to, in my opinion. There's a lot of real gems in that book. Before we do that, however, there is one final machine I'm going to be covering. The channel mascot, the Titan you see on the screen right now, will be getting its own video. The R04C Rock will be on display in terms of its backstory, configurations, and role. Normally I don't cover custom mechs at all, but this mech is specifically built for the channel, so why not? I hope everyone enjoys it when everything comes together, because as you know, Purple Bird is in fact strong. So, with all of that said, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to hit like. It really does help. Also, if you're new here, have you considered subscribing? I cover a ton of Battletech materials, from lore to general Battlemechs and other resources, and you'll be happy with the content, I promise. And, as always, I want to give a huge shout out to the YouTube channel members. I say this every time and I mean it, but this content is really only made possible because of viewers like you. If you would like to join the ranks of the YouTube channel members, remember there is the join button that should be available, which will allow you to, of course, join and support the channel in more depth. So, what did you think of the Juliano? Is it the fierce purple bird monster it's portrayed as, or do you see it differently? Let me know in the comments section below, and I'll catch you all there.